Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the stars through the main screen when the universe changed forever. The alarm systems screamed across the ship as massive shapes appeared on the scanner like ghosts becoming real in the darkness of space around the Titan mining stations where Jake had been patrolling for 3 boring months. "Sir, we have contacts," said Lieutenant Karen Bell from her station as her fingers moved fast over the controls. 15 ships. "Sir? And they are big." Jake felt his heart beat faster as he looked at the screen showing ship designs he had never seen before, with hulls that looked like they were made from black metal and strange symbols glowing blue along their sides. "Are they human ships?" Jake asked, even though he already knew the answer. "No, sir," Karen said. "They are not in any database, and, sir, they are not responding to our signals." The biggest ship moved forward toward the Defiance, and Jake could see it was 10 times larger than his own vessel, with weapons that made his ship look like a toy in comparison. Then the communication system came alive with a voice that sounded like metal grinding against stone and spoke in perfect English that somehow felt wrong in the way it was spoken. "Human vessel, you will surrender now and prepare to receive representatives of the Caltharian Empire," the voice said with no emotion. "You have one of your time units called minutes to comply." Jake looked at his crew and saw the fear in their eyes, but also something else that made him proud to be human, and that was the refusal to give up without a fight. "This is Captain Morrison of the United Earth ship Defiance," Jake said into the communication system. "State your intentions and identify yourself." "I am War Commander Zeth Kar of the Caltharian Empire," the voice replied. "Your species has been selected for integration into our domain, and you will submit or face destruction." The main screen changed to show the alien commander, and Jake felt his breath catch as he looked at something that was clearly not human, with skin like gray stone and eyes that glowed red in a face that had too many angles. "We are the masters of this sector of space," Zeth Kar continued. "Every species has bowed before our power, and you will do the same." To show their strength, 3 of the alien ships moved toward large asteroids near the mining stations, and Jake watched in horror as beams of pure energy turned the space rocks into glowing dust in seconds. The power displayed was beyond anything humans had ever created, and Jake knew that his ship and the entire human fleet could not match even one of these alien vessels in direct combat. "You see, human," Zeth Kar said, "resistance is not possible and will only bring pain to your people." Jake felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him as he realized he might be the first human to speak for all of humanity in this first contact with an alien race behind him. Karen whispered, "Sir, what do we do?" Jake thought about his wife Susan back on Earth and his daughter Emma, who was only 8 years old and wanted to be a star pilot like her father when she grew up. He thought about all the humans living on, dozens of worlds who had worked so hard to build new homes among the stars and who deserved to live free. "Human captain," Zeth Kar said, "you will respond now." Jake stood up straight and looked directly at the alien face on the screen, feeling something deep inside him that had been passed down from every human who had ever stood up to a bully or faced impossible odds. War Commander Zeth Kar. Jake said in a clear voice, "We have received your message and we understand your position." The alien seemed pleased and leaned forward, expecting the words that every other species had spoken before. "However," Jake continued, "we respectfully decline your generous offer." The silence that followed seemed to stretch across space itself as Zeth Kar stared at Jake with those red eyes growing brighter. "You refuse," the alien said, as if the words made no sense. "That is correct," Jake replied. "Humanity will not bow to you or anyone else." The alien ships around the Defiance seemed to move closer, and Jake could feel the tension from his crew, but no one suggested surrender. "You do not understand, human," Zethkar said. "We have destroyed civilizations older than your species and conquered races with technology beyond your dreams." "Maybe you have," Jake said, "but you have never met humans before." Dr. Lisa Carter sat in her laboratory aboard the research vessel Horizon, watching the communication between Jake and the alien commander, while her mind raced to understand what they were dealing with. She had studied every word and gesture from the alien and realized that this Zethkar was genuinely confused by the human response. "They expected us to surrender immediately," she said to her assistant, Dr. Paul Grant. "Their entire system is based on intimidation." On the screen, Jake continued to stand firm against the alien demands while the Caltharian ships surrounded his vessel. "You will reconsider, human," Zethkar said, "or your ship will be destroyed as an example." "Then destroy it," Jake replied. "But know that every human in space will learn what happened here, and they will all give you the same answer." Admiral Peter Hayes received the communication from the Defiance on his flagship near Earth and felt pride mixed with fear as he realized that war with an superior alien race was about to begin. "Send this message to all human colonies and ships," he ordered. "Humanity stands together and we will never bow." War Commander Zethkar stood in his command chamber aboard the flagship, thinking about the strange response from the humans as his advisors waited for orders. "They must be insane," said Sub-Commander Velthar. "No species has ever refused our demands after seeing our power." Zethkar looked at the tactical display showing human settlements scattered across dozens of star systems like tiny lights in the darkness. "Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand their situation," he said. "We will make an example of one of their colonies, and they will see reason." The message he sent back to the Caltharian High Command on the homeworld was simple and confident. "Encountered minor resistance from local species called humans," he reported. "Will demonstrate superior force and expect immediate surrender within one cycle." Engineer Carlos Rodriguez worked frantically in the underground workshops of Mars Colony as news of the alien ultimatum spread through human space like wildfire. The wreckage of a small alien scout ship had crashed on Mars 3 days earlier, and Carlos had been given the impossible task of understanding technology that was thousands of years ahead of human science. "The power source is unlike anything we have ever seen," he told his team. "It seems to draw energy from space itself." His assistant, Maria Lopez, looked at the strange metal that seemed to shift colors in the light. "Can we copy it?" she asked. "Not in time for this war," Carlos said. "But maybe we can learn enough to give our ships a fighting chance." Commander Amy Stone gathered the captains of Earth Fleet in the war room deep under the Pacific Ocean, where humanity had built its most secure command center. "We are outgunned and outmatched," she said, looking at the faces of men and women who had trained their whole lives for space combat. "But we have advantages they do not expect," Captain Mike Roberts of the heavy cruiser. Liberty raised his hand. "What advantages could we possibly have?" "Against ships like that?" he asked. Amy activated the holographic display showing the solar system with human ships marked in blue and estimated alien positions in red. "We know every asteroid belt, every gas cloud, and every piece of space junk in our territory," she said. "They are strangers here, and we are going to use that against them." The plan she outlined was dangerous and required perfect timing, but it was better than meeting the aliens in open battle where humanity would be destroyed. In minutes on Proxima Centauri, the newest human colony, Governor Nancy White received the evacuation order and felt her heart break as she looked at the city her people had built from nothing. "How long do we have?" she asked Colonel Tony Garcia, who commanded the small military force stationed on the planet. "Our scouts report alien ships will arrive in 6 hours," he said. The evacuation transports can only take half the population. Nancy made the hardest decision of her life, military personnel. And volunteers will stay behind, she announced. We will buy time for the civilians to escape. Tony nodded and began organizing the defense, knowing that none of them expected to survive, but determined to make the aliens pay for every meter of ground. Volunteers who stayed included teachers, farmers, engineers, and even children old enough to carry equipment as they prepared hidden positions in the underground caves where the colony had first sheltered. Dr. Lisa Carter continued her analysis of the alien communication from aboard the Horizon as it moved toward the outer colonies to provide scientific support. Their language patterns suggest a rigid hierarchical society, she reported to Admiral Hayes. They literally cannot understand why we refuse to accept their authority. Her assistant, Dr. Paul Grant, looked worried as he studied the alien ship designs. If they are this confused by our response, he said, what will they do when they realize we intend to fight? Lisa feared she already knew the answer. The alien fleet reached Proxima Centauri exactly when their scouts had predicted, and Zethkar felt confident that this demonstration would end human resistance quickly. Destroy their military installations, he ordered, but leave the population centers intact so they can witness our power. What happened next surprised everyone, including the humans who had prepared the defense. The planet appeared to be defenseless as the alien ships approached, but when they entered, the upper atmosphere hidden missile batteries opened fire from concealed positions in the mountains. The missiles could not penetrate alien shields, but they forced the ships to maneuver and reveal their positions to the second wave of defenders. Colonel Tony Garcia led a squadron of small human fighters in a desperate attack against ships 50 times their size, using tactics that made no sense to the aliens. Instead of trying to destroy the massive alien vessels, the human pilots targeted sensor, arrays, and weapon ports with precise strikes before vanishing into the asteroid field that surrounded the planet. They fight like insects, complained Sub-Commander Velthar as he watched his ships take minor damage from the coordinated attacks. Insects can still sting, Zethkar replied, as he realized the humans were willing to sacrifice their lives for no strategic gain. He could understand. The final assault on the planetary surface met more surprises as the aliens discovered that the human colonists had vanished into underground shelters connected by tunnels that ran for hundreds of kilometers. Every building in the colony had been rigged with explosives, and as alien troops entered to search for survivors, the humans detonated their own homes, rather than let them be captured. The few aliens who managed to reach the underground shelters found empty rooms with messages written on the walls in simple alien language that the humans had somehow learned. You expected us to bow, the messages said, but humans choose how to die. When the battle ended 3 hours later, the aliens controlled an empty planet and had suffered casualties for the first time in their empire, history. Zethkar stared at the reports from his ship commanders and felt something he had never experienced before, which was doubt. They destroyed their own colony rather than surrender, he said to his advisors, and killed themselves rather than serve us. The implications were disturbing because every other species the Caltharians had conquered had begged for mercy and accepted slavery rather than face death. News of Proxima Centauri, heroic last stand, reached every human settlement within days, and instead of breaking morale, it had the opposite effect. Admiral Hayes read the final message from Colonel Garcia and felt tears in his eyes. Tell all humans that Proxima Centauri stood firm. The message said, we did not bow, and neither should you. Captain Nicole Parker received the distress call from Proxima Centauri while her convoy of civilian ships was moving refugees from the outer colonies toward safer systems. Change course toward the Centauri system, she ordered her navigation officer. We need to pick up any survivors. Lieutenant Commander Frank Davis looked at her with concern from his position at the weapons station. "Captain, the aliens might still be there," he said. "We are civilian ships with minimal defenses." Nicole looked at the scared faces of the refugees filling her ship and made the choice that would define the rest of the war. "Then we help who we can and run if we have to," she said, "but we do not abandon our people." What her convoy found at Proxima Centauri changed everything they thought they knew about fighting this war. The alien ships had left, but the planet's surface was covered with evidence of the battle that had taken place, and in the underground shelters they found detailed records of every alien weakness the defenders had discovered. "They saved this information for us," said Dr. Janet Hill, as she studied the technical data left behind by Carlos' team. Even while they were dying, they were thinking about how to help the next battle. The refugees, who had been afraid and hopeless, suddenly became determined as they realized that humans had actually hurt the seemingly invincible aliens. Dr. Benjamin Clark worked day and night in his laboratory deep under the Rocky Mountains using the technical data from Proxima Centauri and the alien wreckage that Carlos had studied on Mars. "Their shields work by deflecting energy attacks," he explained to his team, "but they have never faced weapons that use gravitational distortion." His assistant, Dr. Carol Walsh, looked at the prototype device they had built, using principles that human science had only theorized about. "Will it work?" she asked. "Only one way to find out," Benjamin said, as he activated the gravitational field generator and watched it tear a hole through 3 meters of the strongest metal humanity had ever created. The breakthrough was sent immediately to every human colony and ship, with instructions for building the new weapons using materials that could be found on any world with a basic industrial base. Children on Earth practiced evacuation drills, while their parents worked in factories that ran 24 hours a day, building weapons and ships for the war effort. 8-year-old Emma Morrison, daughter of Captain Jake, drew pictures of space battles and asked her mother when Daddy would come home. "When the bad aliens learn that humans do not give up," her mother. Susan said elderly veterans came out of retirement to fly missions and teach young pilots everything. They had learned about space combat, even though none of them had ever faced anything like the Caltharian ship's commander Steve Phillips organized wolf-pack attacks using the new gravitational weapons and hit-and-run tactics that kept the aliens constantly off balance. "We cannot match their firepower," he told his squadron, "but we can be everywhere at once and nowhere when they try to hit back." The mining asteroids became weapon factories as engineers like Roberto Santos figured out how to turn space rocks into massive kinetic missiles that could punch through alien hulls. "If they want to rule our space," Roberto said, "they will have to do it while dodging mountains thrown at light speed." Dr. Helen Wright coordinated the hidden research stations that sprang up throughout human space, using caves, asteroid mines, and even hollowed-out comets to hide scientists working on new technologies. "The aliens think in terms of planets and major installations," she reported to Admiral Hayes. "They do not expect resistance from small, hidden bases." Each research station focused on a different aspect of the alien technology and shared their discoveries through a communication network that used quantum entanglement to prevent interception war. Commander Zeth Carr found himself facing a type of warfare that made no sense according to everything the Caltharian Empire had learned over thousands of years of conquest. "They attack our supply convoys with weapons that should not exist," he reported to the High Command, "and when we respond, they vanish like shadows." His fleet had destroyed 3 more human colonies, but each victory cost more ships and revealed new human capabilities that should have been impossible. "They learn from every battle," Sub-Commander Vel Thar said, "and they share that knowledge faster than we can adapt." The worst part for Zeth Carr was the growing realization that other species in the Caltharian Empire were watching this conflict with interest. Intelligence reports suggested that subject races were beginning to ask questions about why they had never tried to resist, and whether the Caltharian military was as invincible as they had always believed. on the prison world of Sector Prime, the reptilian natives, whispered about the humans who refused to bow and wondered if freedom might be possible. The aquatic Nereid workers in the deep space mining stations began to slow down their production and claim equipment failures that were difficult to verify. Even some Caltharian junior officers privately questioned whether the Empire could continue to rule through fear alone if one primitive species could cause so much trouble. Admiral Hayes stood in the Earth Command Center reading reports from every human world and felt something he had not expected when the war began, which was hope. "They thought this would be over in weeks," he said to his staff, "but we are teaching them that humans do not break easily." Captain Jake Morrison led his ship in another raid against alien supply lines using the new gravitational torpedoes that Benjamin Clark's team had developed. The weapons tore through alien shields like they were made of paper, and Jake felt satisfaction as he watched enemy ships struggling to repair damage they had never experienced before. "This is for Proxima Centauri," he said as his torpedoes found their target. Dr. Lisa Carter made a discovery that changed everything when she analyzed captured alien communications and realized that the Caltharian Empire was starting to have internal problems. "They are facing resource shortages and political pressure to end this war quickly," she reported. "The High Command expected easy victory, and now they are being questioned by their own people." The intelligence was shared with every human commander, and suddenly the impossible began to seem achievable. If humanity could hold out long enough, the alien empire might collapse from within, and the species that had seemed invincible would learn what every human already knew. Sometimes the strongest-looking enemy has the weakest foundation, and all it takes is one group willing to refuse to bow to bring the whole structure down. Lieutenant Commander Danny Foster watched through his scope as the massive Caltharian supply convoy moved through the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, completely unaware that 20 human ships waited in the shadows. "Remember the plan," he whispered into his communication system. "Hit the command ship first, then scatter before they can coordinate a response." His wolf pack consisted of modified mining vessels and light cruisers armed with the new gravitational weapons that Dr. Benjamin Clark's team had perfected over months of desperate research. The attack lasted exactly 4 minutes, and when it ended, 3 alien ships were drifting powerless, while the rest of the convoy fled toward the outer system, leaving their supplies behind. "Target destroyed," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim from her fighter. "No casualties on our side." Danny felt the satisfaction of another successful raid, but he knew that each victory brought them closer to the aliens, learning how to counter human tactics. Dr. Helen Wright received the technical data from the captured supply ships at her hidden research station inside the Ceres asteroid and immediately understood that humanity had gained access to something incredible. "This is not just weapons technology," she told her team. "These are communication codes and navigation data for their entire fleet." Tech specialist Ryan Murphy spent 3 days breaking the alien encryption using quantum computers hidden in ice caves on Europa. What he found changed the entire war because the aliens had never imagined that humans could understand their technology well enough to decode their most secret information. "They are planning a major attack on Earth," Ryan reported to Admiral Hayes. "But more importantly, they are having serious problems with logistics and internal politics." The intelligence revealed that War Commander Zeth Carr was facing criticism from the Caltharian High Command for his failure to quickly defeat the humans. Other alien commanders were being sent to replace him, and the entire empire was beginning to question whether their traditional methods of conquest could work against a species that refused to accept defeat. Admiral Hayes made the decision that would either save humanity or doom it to total destruction. "We are going to attack their base at Alpha Centauri," he announced to his senior staff, "while they are focused on preparing their assault on Earth." The plan was audacious because it meant taking nearly every combat ship humanity possessed and leaving Earth defended only by planetary weapons and orbital stations. If we fail, Earth will be defenseless, warned General Patricia Lopez. They could destroy our home world. If we do nothing, they will destroy it anyway. Hayes replied, "Our only chance is to hit them so hard they have to reconsider whether conquering humanity is worth the cost." Captain Nicole Parker had transformed her refugee convoy into a mobile supply network that kept human forces equipped and fed during the months of guerrilla warfare. "The civilian population is not just supporting the military," she reported. "They are part of the war effort in ways the aliens never expected. Families on every human world contributed to the resistance by providing hiding places for supplies, manufacturing weapons in basement workshops, and serving as communication relays for the hidden network that Dr. Helen Wright had established. The aliens had expected to face human military forces, and then accept the surrender of the civilian population, but instead they found that every human was a potential fighter. Children carried messages between resistance cells while pretending to play games, and elderly people used their knowledge of local geography to guide ambush operations. Emma Morrison, now 9 years old, had learned to recognize alien ship types and helped her mother coordinate supply drops for her father's unit using a toy communicator that was actually a sophisticated military device. The Caltharian Empire had never encountered a species where the entire population participated in warfare, and their intelligence reports described humans as a hive-mind species that fought with complete coordination, War Commander Zeth Carr. Read these reports with growing concern because his own species had always relied on conquering the military and then ruling the civilians through fear. "How do we defeat an enemy where every individual is a soldier?" he asked his advisors. The question had no answer in Caltharian military doctrine. Because they had never faced anything like humanity before, Dr. Lisa Carter made another breakthrough when she analyzed alien psychological profiles and realized that the Caltharian Empire had a fundamental weakness. "They depend entirely on the belief that they are invincible," she reported. "Their whole society is built on the idea that resistance is futile." "What happens when that belief is challenged?" asked Dr. Paul Grant. "Their empire begins to fall apart," Lisa said, "because every subject species starts to wonder why they accepted slavery." The evidence was already appearing in intelligence reports as the reptilian sectar began sabotaging mining operations and the aquatic nereids started coordinating work slowdowns. Even more importantly, some Caltharian junior officers were beginning to question orders and ask whether the Empire was really as strong as they had always believed. The attack on the alien base at Alpha Centauri began exactly as Admiral Hayes had planned, with human ships appearing from hyperspace in perfect formation. Captain Jake Morrison led the assault force using every lesson learned from months of fighting against superior technology. The gravitational weapons that Benjamin Clark had developed tore through alien shields while human fighters used asteroid fields and gas clouds to avoid return fire for Proxima Centauri. Jake broadcast as his ship fired the first shots of the major battle. The aliens were completely unprepared for an attack on their base because no conquered species had ever had the ability or courage to strike at Caltharian territory. Danny Foster led his wolf pack against the orbital defenses, while other human units targeted the supply depots and communication centers that coordinated alien operations throughout the sector. The battle lasted 18 hours and ended with the complete destruction of the alien base and the capture of War Commander Zeth Carr himself. More importantly, the victory was broadcast throughout the galaxy by the communication system that Ryan Murphy had hacked. Every species under Caltharian rule learned that the invincible empire could be defeated and that humans had proven resistance was not only possible, but successful. The psychological impact was greater than the military victory because for the first time in thousands of years, subject races began to believe that freedom was achievable. On Earth, the celebration was mixed with fear, because everyone knew that the aliens would respond to this defeat with overwhelming force. "They will try to destroy us completely now," Admiral Hayes told the Planetary Defense Council. "But we have shown the galaxy that they can be beaten." Dr. Helen Wright prepared for the final battle by sharing every piece of human technology with the other species that were beginning their own rebellions. "Whatever happens to us," she said, "we have given them the tools to continue the fight." Commander Steve Phillips received the encrypted message from the Sectar resistance while his ship hid in the shadow of a gas giant in the Vega system. "Human Commander, this is Sectar. Freedom Fighter Kess ran." The translation device converted the reptilian language into English. "We request meeting to discuss coordination against common enemy." Steve felt his heart race as he realized that humanity was no longer fighting alone against the Caltharian Empire. The meeting took place on a small asteroid where representatives from 3 different species gathered for the first time in galactic history to plan a rebellion. Kess Ran was a 7-foot-tall reptilian with scales that changed color when he spoke and eyes that showed intelligence and determination that reminded Steve of human resistance fighters. "My people have served the Caltharians for 800 years, Kess Ran said. "But your species has shown us that freedom is possible." The aquatic representative was Naya Dole from the Nereid species, who had to wear a special breathing apparatus to survive in the asteroid atmosphere. "Our underwater cities have been manufacturing centers for the Empire," she explained. "But we can turn those facilities into weapons production if you share your gravitational technology." The third representative surprised Steve the most because HIVEC was from the insectoid Kive OTH species that humans had never encountered before. "We are hive mind but not slave mind," HIVEC communicated. "Through electronic translation, we choose to join human rebellion for freedom of all species." Dr. Claire Adams worked frantically to establish communication protocols between the different species and coordinate their resistance efforts across multiple star systems. The challenge was enormous because each species had different technology, biology, and military capabilities, but they all shared the determination to end Caltharian rule. The Sectar have natural stealth abilities that make them invisible to most sensors, she reported to Admiral Hayes. "The Nereid can operate in environments where other species cannot survive, and the Kiv Oth have coordination capabilities that rival our best computer networks." The plan that emerged from weeks of secret meetings was more ambitious than anything humanity had attempted before. Instead of isolated resistance, each species would coordinate simultaneous uprisings across the Empire while human forces provided technological support and strategic guidance. Captain Nicole Parker established supply routes between the different species using her converted civilian ships to transport weapons technology and personnel between star systems. "We are not just fighting for humanity anymore," she told her crew. "We are fighting for every species that refuses to bow." The coordination required constant risk because Caltharian patrols were searching for any sign of rebellion, and capture meant death or worse. Lieutenant Sarah Kim led joint human-alien strike forces that combined the best capabilities of each species into fighting units that the Empire had no defense against. Sectar stealth specialists would infiltrate Caltharian facilities while Nereid underwater assault teams attacked from directions the aliens never expected, and Kivoth coordination allowed perfect timing of complex operations. The first coordinated uprising began on the mining world of Kepler-7, where Sectar workers had spent months preparing hidden weapons. Cassius Kess Ran led his people in a lightning assault on the Caltharian garrison, while human ships provided orbital support with gravitational weapons. The battle lasted only 6 hours before the planet was free for the first time in centuries. Similar uprisings erupted across the Empire as the Nereid seized control of underwater manufacturing facilities, and the Kiv Oth used their hive mind abilities to coordinate massive simultaneous strikes. Dr. Helen Wright watched the intelligence reports flow in from across the galaxy and realized that the Caltharian Empire was facing its worst nightmare. They built their entire system on the assumption that conquered species would never cooperate, she said. But we have created an alliance they cannot understand or defeat. The psychological impact on the Caltharians was devastating because their military doctrine had no answer for coordinated multi-species rebellion. War Commander Zeth Kar sat in his prison cell on Earth reading reports of the uprisings and understanding that his empire was collapsing. The humans did not just refuse to bow. He told his interrogator, Dr. Lisa Carter, they taught every other species how to stand. The Caltharian High Command faced rebellion on dozens of worlds while their military forces were scattered and unable to respond effectively to coordinated attacks. Some Caltharian commanders began to defect, bringing their ships and crews over to the rebellion as they realized that their empire was doomed. Admiral Hayes received reports that entire Caltharian fleets were surrendering rather than fight against the growing alliance of free species. The war is changing faster than anyone expected, he told his staff, but we must be prepared for their final desperate attempt to destroy everything rather than accept defeat. The intelligence was correct because the Caltharian High Command made the decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy. If we cannot rule, then we will destroy everything, declared High Commander Vel Karn. Prepare the planet-killer weapons. Dr. Benjamin Clark received the terrifying news through intercepted communications and realized that humanity faced a choice between victory and the annihilation of entire worlds. They have weapons that can destroy planets, he reported to Admiral Hayes, and they are preparing to use them against any world that rebels. The alliance of free species faced the ultimate test as they learned that their enemy would rather commit genocide than accept the end of their empire. Captain Jake Morrison led the combined fleet that included ships from every species in the alliance as they prepared for the final battle. We started this war because we refused to bow, he told the fleet commanders. And we will end it by showing the galaxy that freedom is worth any sacrifice. The destination was the Caltharian homeworld, where the Empire was making its last stand, with weapons capable of destroying entire solar systems. Emma Morrison, now 10 years old, watched her father's ship disappear into hyperspace and whispered a prayer that the humans who had taught the galaxy to stand would also teach it how to win. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and the outcome would determine whether the universe would be ruled by fear or by the hope that one small species had given to every other race. They thought we would bow, Admiral Hayes said, as the combined fleet jumped toward the enemy home world. Instead, we taught them all to fight. Admiral Kate Johnson stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching the massive combined fleet emerge from hyperspace at the edge of the Caltharian home. System ships from 5 different species flew in perfect formation, representing the largest military alliance in galactic history, united by the simple human idea that freedom was worth fighting for. All ships report ready for final assault, reported Captain Jake Morrison from his position commanding the human task force, the Caltharian. Homeworld hung in space before them, surrounded by defensive stations and the most powerful military fleet the Empire had ever assembled. High Commander Vel Karn broadcast his final ultimatum across all frequencies with a voice filled with desperate rage. You will withdraw from this system, or we will activate planet-killer weapons that will destroy every world that has joined your rebellion. Admiral Johnson looked at the representatives from each allied species standing beside her on the bridge, and saw the same determination in every face. High Commander Vel Karn, this is Admiral Johnson of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. She responded, we offer you one chance to surrender and transition to a democratic government that represents all species equally. The silence that followed was broken by Sector. Commander Kess Ran, who spoke for his entire people. We will not return to slavery, he said. freedom or death. Nereid Fleet Commander. Naya Dole added her voice from the underwater assault. Ships. The depths have risen, she declared, and we will not sink back into bondage. The Kiv Oth-Hive mind spoke through their representative Hiv-Ek with the voice of millions. Unity in freedom is stronger than unity in oppression. The insectoid communicated, we choose the difficult path. Dr. Marcus Lee monitored the communications from his position aboard the command ship and realized that something unprecedented was happening. Caltharian ships throughout the home system were powering down, their weapons and breaking formation. Sir, we are receiving surrender signals from multiple enemy vessels, he reported. It appears that Caltharian junior officers are refusing orders. The empire that had ruled through fear for thousands of years was collapsing as its own military realized that fighting the entire galaxy was impossible. Captain Nicole Parker led the civilian evacuation ships that had volunteered to rescue Caltharian civilians who had never chosen to support their empire. Oppression. Not all Caltharians are our enemies, she announced. We fight the system, not the species. The battle that everyone expected never happened because the sight of multiple species working together broke something fundamental in the Caltharian: military psychology. War Commander Zeth Carr watched from his prison cell on Earth as his own people abandoned the empire that had defined their existence. They cannot understand how we created unity from diversity, he said to Dr. Lisa Carter. Their entire culture is based on domination, not cooperation. High Commander Vel Karn made the final desperate decision to activate the planet killer weapons rather than accept defeat, but when he gave the order, nothing happened because the Caltharian technicians who operated the weapons had already defected to the Alliance. The war is over, announced Admiral Johnson as Caltharian resistance collapsed throughout the home system. But the real work is just beginning. The transformation of the Caltharian Empire into the Galactic Federation required months of negotiation and planning as representatives from dozens of species worked to create a government that had never existed before. Dr. Helen Wright led the Constitutional Convention that brought together beings who had never been allowed to speak for themselves. Every species will have equal representation, she declared, and no world will be ruled by another against its will. The process was difficult because species that had been enemies for centuries had to learn to work together, but the example of humanity cooperation with the Sectar Nereid and Kiv Oath showed that different races could unite for common goals. Captain Jake Morrison returned to Earth where his daughter Emma, now 11 years old, had grown up during the war that changed the galaxy. "Did we win, Daddy?" she asked as she hugged him at the spaceport. "We did more than win," Jake said. "We showed everyone that freedom is possible." The memorial ceremony took place on Earth where representatives from across the galaxy gathered to honor all who had died fighting for freedom. The memorial wall listed names from every species, including Caltharians, who had defected and died fighting against their own empire. Admiral Hayes read the inscription that would be remembered throughout galactic history. "They thought we would bow," he said. "Instead, we taught the galaxy how to stand." Dr. Benjamin Clark continued his research, but now shared his discoveries freely with scientists from every species working together to build a better future. The gravitational weapons that had won the war became the foundation for new technologies that would benefit all races. Commander Steve Phillips established the Galactic Defense Force that included volunteers from every species working together to protect freedom. "We must always remember," he told his mixed species crews, "that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance." The schools that opened throughout. The Federation taught children from different species together for the first time in galactic history. Human teachers worked alongside Sectar educators, Nereid scientists, and Kiv Oth technical specialists to create a generation that would never Know the hatred that had divided the galaxy. Emma Morrison attended classes with young beings from across the Federation and learned that diversity made everyone stronger. War Commander Zeth Carr was given the choice between execution and exile and chose to work with the new government, helping to identify Caltharian war criminals. Your species showed mercy even to enemies, he told Dr. Lisa Carter. This is why you succeeded where we failed. The former Empire worlds slowly adapted to democracy, with some struggling more than others, but all moving toward the goal of self-determination. The Nereid transformed their underwater cities into research centers that studied ocean worlds throughout the galaxy. The Sectar used their stealth abilities to explore dangerous regions of space and establish early warning systems against external threats. The Kiv-Oth coordination abilities became the backbone of the Federation communication network that connected thousands of worlds years past, and the galaxy changed in ways no one had imagined when the war began. Trade replaced conquest as species learned that cooperation was more profitable than domination. Children grew up believing that working together was normal while their parents remembered, when such cooperation seemed impossible, the phrase, "they thought we would bow," became a saying used throughout the galaxy whenever anyone faced injustice or oppression. It reminded every being that one small species had proven that resistance was possible, and that freedom was worth any sacrifice. Admiral Johnson retired to a small farm on Earth where she grew vegetables that fed families from a dozen different species who had chosen to live together. On quiet evenings, she looked up at the stars and remembered when those same stars had been ruled by fear. Now they shone with the light of hope that humanity had given to the galaxy when they refused to bow and taught everyone else how to stand. The universe was vast, and there would always be new challenges, but the lesson was clear: freedom once awakened could never be completely destroyed, as long as there were beings willing to stand up and say no to oppression. Humanity had given the galaxy the greatest gift possible, which was the knowledge that even the mightiest empire could fall if enough people refused to bow.